Okay, let's just dive right into this. For decades, the value of a business seemed pretty simple, right? It was profit, it was market share, basically the bottom line. But what if value means more than just the money? Today, we're going to explore this really fundamental shift in how we measure what makes a business or even a government project good.
I mean, that's a huge question, isn't it? Is good about creating jobs or, protecting the environment? Maybe it's improving community well-being. For the longest time, all that stuff was seen as admirable, but kind of secondary. They were just nice to haves, really hard to measure, and almost impossible to compare. But that is starting to fundamentally change.
And the key concept we're going to unpack here is called social value. You can think of it as an attempt to create a common language, a common yardstick for all that good we were just talking about. It's about turning those fuzzy ideals into something you can actually point to and measure.
So what does that actually mean in practice? Well, according to the UK government, who's a huge driver in this space, social value is all about the extra benefits that get created when they buy stuff. Let's say a construction company gets hired to build a hospital. Okay, the hospital itself, that's the core service. But the social value comes from the additional things they do, like hiring local unemployed folks, using sustainable materials, or running community health workshops. It's all the value that exists beyond the basic contract.
Now, this idea isn't just a friendly suggestion anymore. It's actually becoming a requirement. So let's take a look at how governments are pushing this change from the top down. You have to remember, governments are enormous customers. They spend billions every single year. So the UK's government commercial function is now recognizing that every single pound they spend is an opportunity. They're not just buying services anymore. They're strategically investing in a better society.
And the scale here, it's just massive. We're talking about £49 billion every single year. That's how much UK public spending is now being looked at through this new lens of social value. A number that big? Well, that's enough to completely reshape entire markets and totally change how companies have to operate. Okay, now what's really interesting here is the metaphor they use, this golden thread. The idea is that the government's biggest priorities, things like recovering from COVID or fighting climate change, should be literally woven directly into every single contract they award. It creates this direct line from high-level national policy all the way down to everyday business.
And this isn't just some vague idea of doing good. The government has actually broken it down into these 5 concrete themes. We're talking about specific, measurable outcomes. Things like creating new jobs, reducing the disability employment gap, or helping communities recover. So now, companies bidding for these big contracts have to show exactly how they're going to contribute to these specific goals.
And here's the kicker. This is what gives the whole model its teeth. It's not just talk. A company's social value promises now count for a minimum of 10% of their total score when they're bidding for a government contract. And in a super competitive environment, that 10% is often the deciding factor between winning and losing millions.
But this isn't just a story about government rules. There's also a really powerful pull coming from inside the business world itself. It's a real shift in mindset.
And as this quote from a recent study shows, the pressure is coming from everywhere. You've got investors, employees, customers. They're all demanding that companies do more than just make a profit. The very definition of what it means to be a successful company is changing.
So to really get this internal shift, researchers came up with this concept, Strategic Social Value Orientation, or SSVO for short. The best way to think of it is like a company's internal compass. It's not just some policy written down in a binder somewhere. It's the shared beliefs and the actual day-to-day behaviors that guide the whole organization toward creating social good.
And this gives us a great visual for what that internal compass looks like. It's built on this foundational belief of mutuality, this core idea that the company's success is completely tied to the success of society. And that belief then drives everything the company does, from leading with a clear purpose that goes way beyond just profit, to actively supporting all its stakeholders and to relentlessly focusing on the real-world consequences of its actions.
So what we have here are these 2 really powerful forces, right? A top-down mandate from government and a bottom-up mindset from within corporations. So how do these 2 paths to the same goal really stack up?
So let's put these 2 approaches side by side, because this is where it gets really interesting. On one hand, you've got the government's social value model. That's driven by an external mandate totally focused on specific contracts. The goal? Win the bid, hit your KPIs. On the other hand, you have the corporate compass, that SSVO. It's driven by internal strategy, it applies to the entire company, and its goal is much broader,
to boost overall performance and, of course, reputation. So yeah, they're two totally different paths, but you can see they're both heading for the exact same destination, making doing good a core part of doing business.
So, what does it mean when this mandate and this mindset start to converge? What does that tell us about the future?
This really is the big question, isn't it? As these two forces, the push from government and the pull from companies, come together, it feels like we're at a major turning point in how we define success in both the public and the private sectors.
What this really means is that we're seeing a new set of rules for the game emerge. First, value is no longer just about the lowest price. It's becoming a measurable blend of economic, social, and environmental factors. Second, this creates a whole new way for companies to compete, not just on cost, but on their positive impact. And finally, and this might be the most important part, government and business are starting to speak the same language, aligning their goals around the biggest challenges we all face as a society.
And that leaves us with one last, kind of provocative thought. As we get better and better at defining and actually quantifying social value, are we going to reach a point where a company's ability to do good becomes its most valuable asset? Something to think about.